KCPT and KC Studio have joined forces to cover the arts more completely. And this next story is part of that collaboration.
In their latest edition, they've got a nice feature on V. Tran and his autobiographical play called The Butcher's Son.
It tells the story of his family's journey from Vietnam to Western Kansas and how V has used the opportunity to contribute significantly to our music and theater scene.
And as you're about to see, how he's also the man behind the increasingly busy Buffalo Room, tucked around back at the Westport Flea Market.
We spent $65.26 on posters and scripts this time. I'm very ambitious and always have been, but I'm also a realist. I mean, when I was studying theater in college, I looked in the mirror. I didn't have any delusions of grandeur. I'm 5'4" and Vietnamese. The odds were against me making it in this profession as a performer.
They haven't learned this land will never be there.
So I knew I had to be adaptable and malleable and shrewd in order to continue to work.
We will wait until the baby is bigger. When he is old enough to travel, we will go together.
That tenacity led me down a lot of different paths. As far as being a performer, being an educator, that taught me empathy. Working lots and lots of temp jobs, waiting a lot of tables, slinging a lot of drinks, but learning every step of the way.
So a couple of years ago, when Joe Zwillenberg, the flea market's owner, offered V the opportunity to book and manage the event space in back, which had previously housed an improv group, he said sure. Then he started to worry.
I had several friends who also ran venues or clubs or theaters, and I thought to myself, oh man, you know, we're friends, but I wonder how they're going to take this. I wonder if they're going to kind of cross their eyes at me or be like, oh, well, here's more competition. But it was the exact opposite. They were the first ones to call and say, what do you need? Do you need curtains? Do you need chairs? You know, how can we help?
With a name that nods to the burgers the space up front is known for, and an even slyer nod to his Garden City High School mascot, the Buffalo Room has been steadily rolling along, showcasing a little bit of everything: cabaret and comedy, film and burlesque, musical tributes, staged readings, and original plays of all kinds, including Fringe Festival productions like this one.
Am I auditioning here?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. That is the one thing we're doing here.
You just got engaged to your hand.
Kevin King and Company's Badder Auditions returned for an encore weekend in August, the same time that V was in Chicago directing a new musical there.
My mother said that my family thought that I took after my grandfather, who was an architect. He would design these resorts and he would build them, and then he'd go on to the next thing and build that. And then it clicked for me is that I have that same kind of spirit.
So, my father escaped Vietnam.
I like to conceptualize things. I like to draw a blueprint for it, and then I like to execute, and then I like to move on to the next thing. Orange is my office hours. That's how I keep track of that. Red and yellow here are conflicts. Blue is my music calendar for my band. And
Spreadsheets and color-coded Google calendars loom large in V's quest for better time management. He takes it seriously.
Keeping a good calendar keeps me honest, you know, and it reminds me that no one's going to accuse you of being lazy. You know, look, you've logged these hours. It's okay to turn it off for the day. It's okay to do a leisure activity. It's okay to enjoy dinner with your wife.
Of course, at any given time, his wife, Mackenzie Goodwin Tran, may be equally busy with a theater project of her own. If not one of the stuffed Buffalo productions they tackle in tandem.
It's always, of course, in your imagination as a theater artist to have your own space. It's an incredible luxury and a wonderful thing to have, and to know all these amazing artists.
It helps that both Mackenzie and V are graduates of the Kansas State Theater program, with its emphasis on learning at least a little bit about every aspect of the craft.
Having limited resources in some ways opens up your creativity, because you have to find creative solutions to things in order to make things happen, and often the best ideas come when you have limitations.
If two heads are good, then three might be even better. Enter Katie Gilchrist. The well-known local actress sings with the V. Tran Band and often co-directs productions here too.
My wife and Katie met before my wife and I met, and they were at a director's table together. So they have this hive mind. They have this shorthand of communication with the two of them. And so when it comes to producing a show together, I'm a redundancy. And so I said, you know what? Why don't you guys take lead on direction, And if you need a third eye, then I'll give my input. Otherwise, I'll be in the back of the room on the laptop thinking about our promotional strategy. More messages coming. Sometimes I feel like for the last 10 years, I've evolved more towards 4-part business, 1-part art. But that's so that I could build a foundation so that now, hey, I do have that spare time to be able to just sit down with my guitar, and become a better player.
If, as they say, timing is everything, V's has been impeccable. He hit town in 2005, just as the Crossroads was booming, the theater scene expanding, and with the Kaufman and Sprint Centers poised to join our skyline. In short, all the building blocks of a cultural renaissance that's helping what he calls middle-class artists choose to live here.
When you're able to work consistently, or when you're able to create your own work, then you're more likely to stay. In the age of the internet, where the internet provides an international town square, maybe I get to choose where I live. Because if I establish myself here, there's nothing to say that I can't go to work in Chicago or go to work in New York when a project or an offer comes, or with my own project, but at the same time wake up in my own bed in a community that I love.
Sweet, sweet summer, oh, I wish I might sing a lullaby.